September 1988, Dublin. A screening room goes dark. 4 Irish musicians watch themselves on screen, massive, mythic, draped in American iconography they don't own. Blues riffs they didn't invent. Gospel choirs singing their songs. The film is called Rattle and Hum. Part concert documentary, part love letter to America. Black and white footage of U2 walking through Graceland. Color sequences of stadium shows where 100,000 people sing back every word. Bono leans back in his chair. He thinks they've made something honest, raw. A document of a band at the height of its powers, paying respect to the music that shaped them. In 6 weeks, the reaction will be nothing like what they expect. The response won't just surprise them, it will threaten everything they've built. And for the first time in their career, U2 will have to face a question they've never seriously considered. What if respect looks like something else entirely when you're not the one receiving it? Rewind 18 months. March 1987. The Joshua Tree drops and immediately becomes a cultural phenomenon. It sells over 3 million copies in the US alone within weeks. With or Without You and I Still Haven't Found What I'm Looking For dominate radio. The album shoots to #1 in 22 countries. U2 isn't just big anymore, they're the band. But there's a tension beneath the triumph. The Joshua Tree is an Irish band's meditation on America. Its landscapes, its contradictions, its soul. Bono and The Edge wrote it from a distance, imagining the desert, the highways, the ghost of Martin Luther King Jr. Now they have to tour it, and touring America means confronting the real thing. The Joshua Tree Tour becomes a juggernaut. They play stadiums, arenas, open-air fields. They film nearly every show. Director Phil Joannou follows them with cameras, capturing not just performances but moments in between. Band meetings, sound checks, visits to Graceland and Sun Studio. Somewhere during that tour, the idea forms. What if they made a film? Not a typical concert movie, but something that showed U2 engaging with American music at its roots. Blues, gospel, country, rock and roll. What if they recorded new music along the way? Spontaneous, unpolished, captured in the same studios where their heroes made history. The Edge later recalled it feeling urgent. They wanted to bottle the energy of the tour before it evaporated. They wanted to prove they weren't just stadium rock careerists. They wanted to show they understood where the music came from. But wanting to honor something and earning the right to do it are not the same thing. The recording sessions start mid-tour. Sun Studio in Memphis. The same room where Elvis, Johnny Cash, and Jerry Lee Lewis recorded in the 1950s. U2 sets up and cuts When Love Comes to Town with B.B. King in a single day. It feels electric in the moment. But listening back, something nags at the edges. The track is competent, professional, but it doesn't sound dangerous. It sounds like a rock band trying very hard to sound authentic. Then there's Angel of Harlem, a tribute to Billie Holiday recorded later with a full horn section. Bono sings about jazz and Harlem and the soul of Black American music. He means it as reverence. But reverence can sound like presumption if you're not careful. The Edge starts to notice something during the tour. Critics are watching them differently now. The Joshua Tree made U2 unavoidable, which means every move gets scrutinized. The stadium scale, the dramatic lighting, Bono's stage speeches about justice and freedom, it all works in the arena. But in print, it can read differently. Rolling Stone runs a cover story during the tour. The headline, U2, Band of the 80s. It's meant as a compliment, but Bono feels the weight of it. Expectations, hype. The uncomfortable sense that U2 has become important, and importance is a difficult thing to live up to. The studio sessions continue. Desire emerges, a raw, primal track built on a Bo Diddley beat. It's the most garage rock thing U2 has done in years, and it feels genuinely dangerous. But around it, other tracks struggle to find their identity. Producer Jimmy Iovine, brought in to helm some of the new studio recordings, pushes them toward bigger sounds, layered production, more polish. The Edge resists. He wants the rawness of the live shows, the sweat, the mistakes. They compromise, and sometimes compromises satisfy no one. Summer 1988. The album starts taking shape. Half live recordings from the tour. Half new studio tracks, some recorded at Sun Studio, some in Los Angeles with Iovine. The live material is undeniable. Bullet the Blue Sky sounds ferocious. Sunday Bloody Sunday, captured at a show in Denver, carries real moral weight, especially after Bono's introduction condemning an IRA bombing that killed 11 people. But the studio tracks reveal a fractured vision. God Part 2 is a furious response to John Lennon's God. Bono railing against cynicism, against the idea that you have to kill your heroes to be free. It's confrontational and raw, but it doesn't invite the listener in. It lectures. Heartland is beautiful but slow. A meditation on America that feels more uncertain than triumphant. And then there's the film. Phil Joanno's footage is stunning. Sweeping shots of American landscapes, intimate moments of the band on stage and off. But when early cuts screen internally, the band can't agree on what story they're telling. Bono sees it as U2, as students of American music, learning from the masters. The Edge sees four guys who might be overstepping. Larry Mullen Jr. is blunt in band meetings. He questions whether they've earned the right to position themselves as inheritors of blues and gospel traditions. The tension isn't explosive. It's quieter than that. It's doubt. And hanging over everything is the release strategy. Album and film, same title, same moment. If one stumbles, the other goes down with it. They're locked in. August 1988. Paramount Pictures commits to a wide theatrical release for Rattle and Hum in October. The album will drop a few weeks earlier to build momentum. Island Records is thrilled. A simultaneous album-film rollout from the biggest band in the world. But U2 is locked in now. There's no time to rethink the tracklist, no time to reshoot the film. The tour is still running, the promotional machine is already moving. Bono does an interview with the Los Angeles Times. He talks about wanting to demystify U2, to show people the music that inspired them. But he also says something that will haunt the campaign. He describes Rattle and Hum as a musical journey. The phrase sounds fine in his head. In print, it sounds pretentious. Larry Mullen Jr. is the quiet skeptic. In band meetings, he questions whether they're overreaching, whether trying to claim kinship with blues and gospel legends is something they've earned. The Edge defends the intent. They're not claiming ownership. They're acknowledging influence, but intent doesn't control perception. Desire is released as the lead single in September. It hits #1 in the UK. It performs well in the US, climbing to #3 on the Billboard Hot 100. The reviews are cautiously positive. Some critics hear the rawness as a return to form. Others hear it as U2 trying too hard to sound unpolished. And then the album drops. October 10th, 1988. Rattle and Hum. 17 tracks. Live in studio blended together. A double album, though it barely cracks 70 minutes. Short by double album standards. The first reviews start landing within days. And everything changes. Rolling Stone publishes one of the first major reviews. 2 stars out of 5. The critic calls it a mess. He praises the live performances but eviscerates the studio tracks. He accuses U2 of slumming in American roots music, of playing tourist in genres they don't understand. The most cutting line, U2 used to seem important, now they just seem impressed with themselves. Other publications pile on. NME in the UK is even harsher. They call Bono's stage speeches in the live recordings messianic and unbearable. They mock the film tie-in as a vanity project. The Village Voice questions whether U2 has any business singing the blues, covering the Beatles' Helter Skelter, or recording with B.B. King when they don't bring anything new to the conversation. The word that keeps appearing in reviews, hubris. Fans are divided. Some love the live recordings. Bullet the Blue Sky, Sunday Bloody Sunday, and Pride, in the Name of Love, performed with raw intensity. The new song, All I Want Is You, a sweeping ballad that closes the album, immediately connects despite minimal promotion. but others feel alienated. The gospel choir on I Still Haven't Found What I'm Looking For, recorded live in Harlem with the new Voices of Freedom, sounds powerful in the moment, but questions arise about whether U2 needed to insert themselves into that space. Then the film releases in November. Box office, respectable but not spectacular. The film earns $9 million domestically, modest for a band of U2's stature. Critics are divided. Roger Ebert gives it 2.5 stars. He admires the performances but finds the film aimless. We learn nothing about U2 that we didn't already assume, he writes. The New York Times is harsher, calling it rock hagiography. U2 worshipping America and the camera worshipping U2. Within a month, the backlash is entrenched. Late-night TV hosts mock Bono's earnestness. Music journalists write think pieces about the problem with U2. The criticism isn't just aesthetic, it's cultural. Who are 4 white Irish guys to claim authority over black American music? Who asked them to be the torchbearers of rock and roll? U2 doesn't have good answers. The commercial numbers tell one story. Rattle and Hum still sells. It goes platinum multiple times. It reaches number 1 on the Billboard 200. Desire peaks at number 3. Angel of Harlem reaches number 14. All I Want Is You becomes an international hit despite being the album's final single. By any normal standard, it's a success. But U2's standard is not normal anymore. Compared to the Joshua Tree, which spent 9 weeks at number 1 and became a cultural touchstone, Rattle and Hum feels like a retreat. It spends only 1 week at number 1 before falling. More important than sales is the shift in perception. For the first time, U2 is mocked openly in the press. Bono's sincerity, once seen as a strength, now reads as self-seriousness. The stadium scale, once awe-inspiring, now feels bloated. The British music press, which helped build U2 in the early 80s, turns especially vicious. NME runs a feature calling U2 the world's most sanctimonious band. Interviews become minefields. Journalists ask Bono to defend the album, the film, the concept. He tries, but his defenses sound defensive. The Edge later said the backlash hurt more than they expected. They thought they were being honest. They thought showing their influences was an act of humility. Instead, it was read as presumption. Behind the scenes, tensions simmer. Larry Mullen Jr. feels vindicated in his skepticism. Adam Clayton tries to stay diplomatic. The Edge starts thinking about what comes next. Bono, for his part, internalizes the criticism differently. He doesn't think Rattle and Hum is a failure. But he realizes U2 has outgrown what Rattle and Hum represents. They can't keep making sincere, earnest rock albums about big themes and expect the world to genuflect. They need to evolve, or they need to disappear. The immediate aftermath is rough. U2 takes 1989 off. No touring, no major releases. They retreat to Dublin and start writing. But something shifts. The break gives critics and fans space to reconsider Rattle and Hum without the hype cycle. By 1990, some music writers begin reassessing the live recordings. Bullet the Blue Sky from the album, especially the live Denver version, is increasingly cited as one of U2's most powerful performances. The rawness that critics dismissed in 1988 starts to feel vital in retrospect. All I Want Is You quietly becomes a fan favorite. The song, which barely registered during the album's initial release, gains traction through word of mouth. Its string arrangement, contributed by Van Dyke Parks, gives it an emotional sweep that stands apart from the rest of the album. The studio tracks remain divisive, but even they find defenders. Desire and When Love Comes to Town start appearing on radio playlists again, reframed as U2 experimenting with roots rock before it became fashionable. The film too ages better. As concert documentaries become more common and more sanitized, Rattle and Hum's unpolished intimacy starts to look brave rather than indulgent. But the real reassessment comes from U2 themselves. The backlash forces them to confront what they've become. The earnestness, the moral weight, the stadium-sized sincerity. It worked for the Joshua Tree, but it's not sustainable. They need to reinvent. And that reinvention will be radical. 1991, Achtung Baby drops. It sounds nothing like Rattle and Hum. Synthetic, ironic, distorted. U2 collaborates with Brian Eno and Danielle Lanois again, but this time they push toward electronic textures, industrial beats, and lyrical ambiguity. Bono trades earnestness for personas. The Fly, Mephisto, characters that let him comment on celebrity, technology, and hypocrisy without preaching. The Zoo TV tour that follows is a spectacle of irony and overstimulation, the opposite of Rattle and Hum's roots rock pilgrimage. Critics and fans embrace it. U2 is reborn, but they don't get there without Rattle and Hum. The backlash taught them what they needed to learn. That sincerity without self-awareness is brittle. That claiming authority in someone else's tradition is risky. That being important is not the same as being interesting. In interviews years later, The Edge acknowledged that Rattle and Hum was a necessary misstep. It closed the door on one version of U2 and forced them to find another. Bono has been more reflective. He said he doesn't regret the album, but he understands why it landed the way it did. Four Irish guys claiming kinship with American music, it was always going to be complicated. The album itself has a strange legacy. It's not considered a classic, but it's also not dismissed. Tracks like Desire, All I Want Is You, and the live versions of Joshua Tree songs remain setlist staples decades later. The film occasionally resurfaces in retrospectives. Critics who once mocked it now reference it as an artifact of a specific moment. U2 at peak fame, struggling with what that fame meant. And the controversy itself became a turning point in how rock bands engage with American roots music. After Rattle and Hum, bands became more cautious about claiming lineage they hadn't earned, more thoughtful about the difference between homage and appropriation. U2 didn't mean to spark that conversation, but they did. Rattle and Hum is not U2's best album, but it might be their most instructive. It's a record about what happens when ambition meets reverence meets ego. When a band tries to honor something bigger than themselves, but forgets to ask whether they're the right messengers. The album's greatest strength is also its fatal flaw, sincerity. U2 meant every note, every gospel choir, every pilgrimage to Sun Studio. They weren't cynical, they weren't calculating. But good intentions don't immunize you from criticism. What Rattle and Hum teaches us is that influence is not the same as ownership. That loving a tradition doesn't grant you access to it. That sometimes the most respectful thing you can do is acknowledge your position outside the circle. It also teaches us about reinvention. Most bands, faced with the backlash U2 endured in 1988, would have doubled down or imploded. U2 did neither. They listened, they retreated, they rebuilt, and they came back as something entirely different. That's the real legacy of Rattle and Hum. Not the album itself, but what came after. The willingness to fail publicly. The humility to learn from rejection. The courage to tear down everything you've built and start over. 36 years later, Rattle and Hum remains a fascinating contradiction. A commercial success that felt like a failure. A love letter that was read as arrogance. A misstep that taught a band how to evolve. And in that contradiction, there's something worth remembering. Sometimes the albums that challenge us, that make us uncomfortable, that force difficult questions about authenticity and intent, are more valuable than the ones that go down easy. Rattle and Hum didn't change music, but it changed U2. And maybe that's enough.